Hello and welcome to this conference hosted by MS Focus, the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation. I'm your host, Kashana Allen, the Cyclical Programs Manager for MS Focus, and I'm joined by a wonderful panel of women that are living with MS. The topic for tonight's discussion is spotlighting the Black experience with MS. After our discussion, we'll open it up to your questions and comments. Now, I would like to give each of our panelists the opportunity to introduce themselves. So let's start alphabetically with Latoya.
Hello, thank you, Kashana, for this opportunity to speak today. My name is Latoya Johnson. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in November of 2018. From there, I founded MS Sense Candle Company, which donates 10% of our sales to the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation, which I love. But there was a whole journey to get there for me. So glad to be here today. And I can't wait to kind of share a little bit of my story.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Monica. Okay, so I do know Monica was having some internet issues. So we are going to skip her, go to Shambrika, and then we'll come back to Monica.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. My name is Shambrika Wise, and I was diagnosed in October of 2015 with relapsing remitting MS. And like the previous panelist said, it's been a journey to me and for me to get to where I am today. But I'm thankful for everything and everyone I encountered along the way, but especially the MS Focus Foundation. It's been amazing. So thank you for the honor to be here today.
Thank you. Monica, can you hear me? Okay, so we're going to move on to Tasha.
Yes, hi, my name is Tasha Andrews. Actually, and thank you for the opportunity to do this. I really appreciate this organization and all that it stands for. But actually, this New Year's Eve will mark 23 years since my diagnosis back in 2001. I had just turned 20 years old, and when I found out that I had MS, it definitely is indeed a journey. For me, it's been, I'm a very quiet, reserved person. So this past March was actually the first time that I was even vocal about me having MS. People were new to even finding out that fact about me. But I love things like this, being able to, talk to people and educate people and just to strengthen our community.
Thank you. Monica, are you back on? Okay. So, Monica, I don't know if you can hear me, but whenever you can speak, just go ahead and jump in and we can do your introduction at that time. So I'm going to start off with some of the talking points for tonight. One of the topics is the delayed diagnosis in the Black community. Would anyone like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I'll just kind of share from my perspective of delayed diagnosis. So I was diagnosed November of 2018, as I said. When I got diagnosed, I had gone through, around that time, I had gone through a multitude of exacerbations and flare-ups. Um, right before my diagnosis, I spent about 4 months in Atlanta for work. I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland. And I dealt with a lot of numbness and tingling, but I ultimately woke up with the left side of my face being numb. When I went to the emergency room for that, the physician that I experienced immediately said, I'm not going to CAT scan or x-ray. I feel like something autoimmune is happening. And that was the first time I had ever heard that. But I could date back my symptoms to like when I was in high school around 2000. So I had constantly went to different doctors, whether it was numbness and tingling in my legs, just feeling like I was cramping up within my legs. I had experienced a lot of symptoms, migraine. So when I was diagnosed, they found 6 lesions on my brain. And they knew from how some of those lesions looked that I had had multiple sclerosis for a while. So ultimately, sometimes I feel like not only as a Black person, but a Black woman, what we experience, especially when we go to the ER and the doctors, isn't taken seriously. So I've been told that I'm having panic attacks or anxiety, like you're not experiencing what it is, because no one had ever taken it serious until I had that experience in August of 2018, to get someone to say, hey, this isn't normal what you're experiencing. Let's look into it further. And within that ER visit, I had a MRI, which is like every time I share my story, people are like, really, what? Like ERs don't really do that. They don't, but I'm grateful of that physician and him listening to me in that moment, because I hadn't experienced it before.
Thank you. Shambrika, would you like to elaborate?
Honestly, I had the best outcome, and I believe in speaking in those spaces that I can really pour into and empathize with. And I do have to say, like, I have been so blessed to have the care providers that I've had. They truly listened to me, and they respected my advocacy for myself. And they listened to me when I honestly didn't know what was going on. When I was diagnosed, my dog bit me like 2 days before on my arm when I was trying to pick up my baby. And I had had this dog for 6 weeks, or since he was 6 weeks old. And he had never done that. And at this time, he was like 4 or 5. And so when I went to the ER a few days later, it was because I had no sensation of temperature. And I found that out when I jumped in the shower, and the left side of my body didn't feel how hot the water was, but the right side did. And so I got out real quick, and I was like, this dog gave me nerve damage. And so it didn't get better, and the tingling was very pronounced. And even more so, like the next morning, I said, I gotta go to the doctor. And so I couldn't get to the doctor, so I actually ended up going to the ER. So when I walked in, they were like, what are your symptoms? And I was like, oh, I'm having tingling and numbing on this side and all the stroke symptoms. And I had never been back so quick before in my life. I'm like, what is wrong with these people? It was a dog bite. And so I'm standing on that business, right, the whole time. And they did everything. I'm like, I work for the government, and this is waste. Like, I have a dog bite and nobody has looked at my arm yet. They're like, because what you're describing is neurological, so we're gonna treat you as such. I'm like, whatever. So then I got hungry, and I'm like, can I get some food? And they were like, no. I was like, I am here for a dog bite. So I'm hungry, half delirious at this point. I'm a new mom. My baby was about a year and a few months. And I was just kind of over it. And so they did the CAT scans. They actually did an MRI with a contrast. And he said, you have all the signs and symptoms of showing MS. And I was like, I can't. And they were like, but you do. And so that's when we kind of dug into like the dog bite for the first time. And he was like, has he ever reacted like that? I said, no. And he said, what were you doing when he bit you? I said, I was trying to pick up the baby. And so apparently, like a few weeks before, his nephew had gotten a dog bite on his leg. And apparently, the dog was communicating to the family that something was going on with the baby, because they found out that he actually had an autoimmune disease from the tests that they had to run, because he wasn't being responsive to some of the tests that they did when he got to the ER. And he said, your dog knows your body better than you do. So he was probably trying to talk to you. And no lie, when I was released from the hospital 4 days later, I got home and he knew not to jump on my bed, but he jumped on my bed and he stretched his body across my legs, and my legs were still tingling. And I said, you were really trying to talk to me. So that dog got steak, he got eggs, he got everything he wanted for as long as he wanted. And I was like, you bite me again, I'm fighting you. So we had to work on that for him to become like my little service animal. But I have to say my team at Presbyterian in Dallas, they were just phenomenal. And Dr. Robert K. Shin from Georgetown, I think he's at UVA now or somewhere in Virginia. Shout out to him too, because he really took me in and nurtured me when I just was mad at the world. So I cannot speak on not being heard because I was more than heard. And I'm very blessed and thankful because I know that's not everybody's experience.
Thank you. So Monica did join us. If you can hear me, Monica, can I get a brief hello?
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry. How you doing?
Doing well, thank you. So I'm not sure if you know what we're speaking about right now, but the delayed diagnosis in the Black community is what the ladies were elaborating on. If you want to speak a little bit about that.
That's a great statement. It is delayed in the Black community, absolutely. I was diagnosed on my 40th birthday after telling my doctor for 3 years that I had MS, and my doctor didn't want to believe me. We kept doing different tests, and it was none of those things. But my first episode when I was 18 in college, and I had optic neuritis, and I got a pack of Tylenol in a brown envelope and sent back to my dorm by the nurse saying, "You're studying too hard." I have a friend who was diagnosed when she was 18 with the same symptoms. She had optic neuritis, went to the dorm, the college nurse, and she was diagnosed immediately, but she doesn't look like us. So the same scenario, different races, different outcomes. So it took me 20 more years to get a conclusive diagnosis after I knew I had it. Didn't want to have it, but just knew I had it. And another friend having it immediately.
Got it. Thank you. Tesha, do you want to touch on that a little bit?
I can kind of piggyback on that in the sense that back in 01, actually that was my first symptom was optic neuritis, and the doctors told me that this is almost always MS. So unfortunate for me that they kind of were like, go right from there. So in that case, I did have a very good team right away, and I'm grateful for that. But I definitely have seen numerous times we have to go back to not just one but two doctors or three. It definitely is prominent, in our community, and hopefully, it's won't be that way, with more talks like this.
Thank you. So the importance of taking care of the entire you and not just MS. Anyone can speak on that for me.
That actually was I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, that actually happened to me very early on. Well, I just had like a not regular cold. I was very brand new, MS was so on my mind, it was new diagnosis, and I had a regular cold, and I was like, does my throat feels itchy? You're just forgetting you can still get a cold, and don't just assume that whatever's going on is just that. I had to kind of learn early on to make sure I'm taking care of the entire me and still, nurture every part, whether you have a common cold, also nurture your spirit, your soul in different ways. Sometimes because it can be a heavy thing, burden, but it doesn't it's not our entirety. So I just try to remember that and just take care of my entire self.
Thank you.
I totally agree with that. I was a new mom, so it's like whatever she got at daycare was coming home, and it sucked because we like literally with me, I take a DMT, which is something that modifies your body in some way, and in this case, Ocrevus pretty much wiped out my immune system essentially. So I was getting colds for like 2 and 3 weeks. I'm like, this sucks. But honestly, the way I took care of the whole me was learning how to say no and set my boundaries. And I didn't always know that. And I feel like this disease, while, it has many drawbacks, like, let's be clear here. It also has many good things that have come out of it for me because I have really and truly learned to put me first in a way that number one, I didn't know how to, that I was never really taught to, because, being Southern, you're taught to take care of everybody around you, but no, like this made me take care of me. So I was really thankful that I had a different perspective with that. And it gave me insight on how to tell my baby to take care of her too. And how to basically like make that time for you. Like if you just want to come home and read, like speak and then go do your thing. But it's a beautiful thing when you learn how to really put you first and you can balance that with still loving everybody around you that you need to.
Thank you.
I often, when people ask me about my diagnosis, I often say it's a blessing in disguise. So when I was diagnosed, I was, just about 32. Um, Diet was whatever it was. If I went out, I ate. If I exercised. But when I went through MS, I went through initially a shock phase. It felt like grief. It was depression. I had gained a lot of weight. I isolated myself because I felt like it was a death sentence. And I want people to know that it is not a death sentence. But for me, it felt like a death sentence because I had gone through flare ups, especially one where I couldn't get out of the bed myself. So that was new for me. That was scary for me because I was like, this is going to completely debilitate me. But after that, like I had went through a period where I felt like I was weak. I felt like I was giving up and I had to fight back. I didn't want the dark side of my mental health to win. So I went through a change in my diet. I went through exercise. And me and one of my really good friends, like every day we held each other accountable. She held me accountable. And it got me to a place where I had never been in life. And had it not been for MS and that diagnosis, I wouldn't have never gotten there because I thought, okay, I'm just fine. If I work out, I work out. If, I want to eat gluten and dairy and all the things that make me feel good. I never, before that moment, stopped to see why does my body feel bad when I eat certain things. So I went through a full elimination diet to get to how to make me feel better. And for me, I got there with my diet. I got there with exercise. I got there. I made some lifestyle changes. So you both are absolutely right. Putting yourself first, learning how to say no. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not perfect there. I still push myself maybe a little too far. I still take on a little bit too much. But I think that's just the personality that I have. But yeah.
Thank you.
I think through has helped.
Is she frozen on my end or everyone's end?
She's frozen and choppy on my end.
Okay. Let me try it again. Monica, can you hear me? Monica, can you hear me? All right, Monica, you might need to log out and come back. While Latoya was speaking, I did want to say that that was a great segue into mental and emotional wellness. If anyone wants to speak a little bit about that.
So yeah, for me, I just shared the initial diagnosis. I went through like a wave of depression, and as I said, the depression felt like grief. I felt like I was grieving the person who I was prior to MS, and I didn't know what MS would be. So I allowed myself to ultimately overthink, and I went online and I started Googling because I didn't know much about MS. I knew a lot of the people that I heard had MS either had, um, walking aids or canes or couldn't walk at all. So I thought that was me. And one of the things I had to do in that moment was to really start to build a support system because I couldn't do it all on my own. Some days I didn't mentally feel like it. A lot of days I didn't physically feel like it. But I didn't want to let my depression, my anxiety, my isolation keep me from growing as a person. So mentally, I had to decide, what does MS look like with me? I know it's different from everybody, but I can't focus on anyone else's experience with it because it's my experience. So I stopped reading what I was finding. I mean, if it was like research related or DMT related, but I would go on like Reddit and like read like different people's experiences, and that was something that I think I essentially regret doing because it didn't help me. I just took on what someone else experience was and said, this is going to be me. And I stopped the negative talk also. I just decided to figure out how to cope. How am I going to cope with the disease? My coping mechanism was candle making. That's how I started MSN's Candle Company. But also, there's a stigma with African Americans and mental health. Like, there's nothing wrong with sitting down and getting a counselor, getting a therapist, and talking through your feelings. That was something I didn't do, but like looking back, that was something that I really probably should have did because a lot of days were really dark, and I don't know if my friends and family knew at the time what I was really experiencing.
Thank you.
And just honor her space. Like, I totally understand. I speak to my friends about that sometimes. Like, you really grieve parts of you that you just don't have being the same anymore. And if you don't know how to deal with grief, it can turn into anger, it can turn into resentment. It eats you, honestly, from a part that is still beautiful, but it's like you have to be very careful with how you manage it. Like, it's totally fine to be mad about this. It's not like we picked it, we didn't do anything. It just happened, right? And I found myself not talking to people because I got tired of explaining. And I'm like, there is a beautiful thing called Google. Leave me alone. I was mad, y'all. Like, it was bad because bless my mama's heart. She was trying to bring magazines to my house, and I did the opposite of what you did. I didn't want to know because I didn't want to put those limitations in my head for me to tap into on my hard days. And not saying there's anything wrong with you. I was over here spitting nails and bullets. I was not the person that I am today. And so the final book, I remember that she brought me, the rest of them I had thrown away, but I was going to attempt to look at it. And it had this segment on what's good for you to eat with MS, blah, 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 blah. I turned that page open, and the first thing it had on there was donuts. I lit my fireplace. I was like, nope, I'm not doing this right now. Like, because that was my favorite snack in the whole wide world. And I know it's not healthy just as a regular person, but I didn't want to hear that now because of this, I really needed to watch how often I went to Krispy Kreme. I went there that day, and I was like, I'm going to not do this eventually, but today is not the day. So it was a journey. And I had to really be honest with myself and be graceful with myself because I said, I do want to be in the best shape and situation I can be because I did have a little that was looking at me and depending on me. But I was like, let me give myself that space to be okay. So I totally get it 100%. And I did get a therapist, and she told me I was hard-headed too, but I still have one.
And I am so happy you didn't say Dunkin' Donuts because when you said Krispy Kreme, woo, my mouth just had a little tingle. I love a good Krispy Kreme. Hot now.
I'm not saying to go get one, but
Love a good donut. Anyone else want to touch on? I think Monica is back. I'm not sure if she can hear me. Monica, right now we are speaking about mental and emotional wellness. I was about to say we're speaking about Krispy Kreme.
I apologize. Verizon was out here today doing something in our yard, and my internet is just shoddy right now. I apologize to everyone. But the importance of mental health is one of my primary therapies. So physical therapy is in mental health, they go together for me. Physical and mental health are very important. And I think that without the benefit of having mental health in my life for the last 12 years, I would be a different person. And my therapist is actually retiring on the 30th. So she's passing me off to someone else. And I sent her a letter today thanking her for all the good girlfriend times that I think we had over the last 12 years. She made me feel very comfortable and gave me that the push and what I needed in my mental health. So I encourage everyone to have a mental health therapist.
Got it. Thank you. Judith, I do see your hand. Please put your question in the Q&A and not the chat, and I will circle back to you. Thank you, Judith. How do we let others show up for us?
By not biting their head off because they choose not to use Google, first of all. Secondly, being willing to give them the space to understand what you need, so they're not showing up for you in a space where you may not need them. Because I think what some people fail to realize is, like, this is technically a disability, but if you called me disabled back then, I probably would have wanted to fight you, because I didn't accept that. I didn't want to accept that. Like, it was a journey for me to be in a space where I can say, you know what? Yes, technically my body is a little bit different and it operates a little bit different than most people, and this is a disability, but I am very much abled. And I did not like it when certain family members tried to treat me with, so much care, like I was like this tiny child. And I'm like, no, I'm like, don't do that, because I'm not doing that for me. So I think being able to have those conversations and making sure you're okay to be in that space to have that conversation, which probably means you need a mental health therapist if you are not. And then you should listen to the mental health therapist if they're giving you good advice. I'm talking to myself. But definitely being able to have those conversations in a healthy way and giving yourself grace for those conversations to move at your own pace, but making sure that the people that are showing up for you know how to show up for you, and they're not just there for themselves. Because some people really like to be in that space where they're like, well, I'm going to do this because X, Y, Z, and it's not really for you. And that can be a problem for a lot of people, especially if they're early on in their diagnosis.
Shambrika, absolutely 100% on what everything you said. For me, it started with communicating. I don't tend to communicate well when it's something I need. And especially with my health, I did not need or want, as you said, Shambrika, to feel like I was disabled or I couldn't do what I could do 2 years ago. So for me, it started with communicating. I had to communicate to the people that show up for me, my village, my support system, what I need and what I don't need. But I realized when I didn't communicate, they assumed what I needed. They said, oh, I'm going to send her this, I'm going to come to her house. But communicating what I need, what I don't need, communicating how I feel, because there was moments I would say, I'm tired, I'll call you back. And people would say, oh, girl, you always tired. Girl, you always tired. My tired isn't your tired. My fatigue isn't your fatigue. So within communicating and letting people know, Yeah, I am always tired, and here are the reasons why. So I'm like you. I want you to Google, and I did have friends that Googled so that they could learn more to kind of be there for me. So communication, it was when you said it, that was just what I immediately ran to, because I didn't communicate. But if I didn't communicate, like 6 years later, I don't have people always at my doorstep or on my phone. They know, like, maybe if it's a little too long and I haven't heard from Toya, let me call her and check on her, because I know she's still not going to ask for any help or say that she's not feeling well, and she going to run those spoons beyond any spoons that she have left, but just let me check in on her. And that is something that I appreciate. I know I see people on some of my support system. I appreciate you guys for just understanding me and hearing me.
Thank you. Tasha?
I agree, as far as letting people show up for you in the way that you need it. Also, I'm really, I try to be more of, not that I was ever hiding it. I think because I was so young when I was diagnosed at 20 years old, I really did keep it to myself. So people really didn't know what was going on. That I didn't want people to know, but it's been a journey, as you age and getting older and wiser, being more open to help if people are even there to offer it. So I mean, it can be hard at times, but understanding, boundaries and your limitations, just kind of make it a full circle moment for me.
Got it. What does science say as of now is the best diet to follow as an MS patient? And how do we navigate through that as African American women? Because, our culture, we like to eat. Like
Yesterday, Can Do actually had a program on a research, and it was talking about diet. And one of the things they said with the Mediterranean diet was the more favorite diet. There's actually not, according to research, a particular diet for MS, but they mentioned that the Mediterranean diet was the favorite diet for MS. And the challenges that comes with of a Mediterranean diet, where and in our community especially, how do you only eat vegetables, and the protein of their choice would be fish, and you show up at a cookout and all they have is that's your protein, and potato salad. So how do you do that? So in moderation, and we have to give ourselves grace each time that we don't do as our doctors suggest, but whatever's best for you is the diet. Just like we say, what's the best medicine for you is the medicine you take. Well, what's the best diet for you? The diet you will follow, that you and your doctor can follow together. That's the best one.
I already told y'all about my separation with donuts. Like, I am definitely not as bad as I used to be, and I can make it past any donut shop these days and not stop. So that is a come up for me. But I did switch up my diet, and actually, I love the Mediterranean diet. I definitely cut out a lot of red meat. Like, I may have 2 or 3 steaks a year now, and that's about it. But I mainly do like seafood. I'll do my chicken, heavy on veggies. I love me a good veggie. And sometimes my dinner at night is a smoothie with peanut butter, and I'm okay with that. I am starting to teach my kid these healthy notions, if you will, because, she eats pretty much what I cook, and I'm going to cook healthy, but I still find ways to do it really well. And I have to give a shout out to 2 of my best friends, Alex Prather and Kirsten Crawford Thorns. Alex has one of the recipe channels that we actually feature on the MS Focus page. And then Kirsten, she just finished a state fair here in Texas not long ago, and she does things with her business called Pearly Southern Kitchen. And so when I developed MS, both of them, came with like support, love, and all the things. And Kirsten started modifying her recipes like, we not gonna do a pound of butter, we just gonna do a cup. And it was just nice to see like how people that, were trying, even if they didn't know everything about the disease, they were trying to meet me in a place where they knew I loved to be. I'm a foodie. And so this encouraged me to learn more modifications to help myself out and, to make it a practice, in my home and pass it on to my kiddo too.
So I will say, I am a recovering serial dieter. So when you said diet, I'm like, girl, I done did Mediterranean, I done did keto, I done did low carb, I done did them all. Okay. But for me personally, autoimmune protocol, I done did the Walls protocol, I done did them all, like literally. But for me personally, when I went and looked at a lot of those diets, like my current diet is components of them. So the sugar, the donuts, it is really hard. But I like what Monica said. It is one really hard, and I did it strict for 2 years. I did the keto diet. I lost a ton of weight. I felt great. I experienced very little MS symptoms. However, it is hard to maintain, and it became hard for me to maintain when I started my DMT and I was on steroids for 2 years. So that was like, okay, I'm not craving my kale salad that I used to crave from Chick-fil-A. Like my body wants these other things. So for me, I try not to focus heavy on what the recipe says. I think about how it makes me feel. So I mentioned dairy. It's horrible when I eat dairy. I'm sometimes a glutton for punishment because I want the mac and cheese. I'm always going to want the mac and cheese. Like, don't tell me I can't have it. I don't want vegan mac and cheese. I want mac and cheese. So in moderation, it's just amazing, Monica, because while I was on that diet, it was easy because we were going through COVID. So I wasn't at nobody's cookout or birthday party or work function. But then when you kind of like reintroduce yourself to the world, then that is where it's like, okay, yeah, I miss eating that, or I forgot about eating that. But I just mentally wake up every day and I'm intentional about wanting to put the right foods, the fruits, the veggies, the healthy fats, the protein in my body. And every day I do it. Every day it's the same. I do it. So if I decide, well, I won't get a whole donut, I will get a munchkin because I had a munchkin 2 days ago from Dunkin' Donuts. So I'm gonna get a couple of munchkins instead of the whole donut. And okay, I ate 2 munchkins. Am I going to crucify myself for that? No. But I will allow, you can't forget to give yourself grace, especially when you are like making a whole lifestyle change when it comes to your diet. So just start out by starting to buy healthier things. I buy different eggs. I no longer buy regular milk. I buy non-dairy milk. I buy cleaner foods, grass-fed butters. That's kind of where I am with it. It's easy to kind of get wrapped around the axle because I feel like every week I see something different come out in the news regarding MS and diet or autoimmune diseases and diet. And I say try for yourself. With each one of them diets, I experienced something great. I won't lie, and I took that goodness from each one in my day-to-day lifestyle today. So I'm not on a diet now, and I'm okay with that.
All right. So my takeaway from every woman was moderation. Mac and cheese is okay, just a little spoonful. All right. So I am going to move over to Q&A. As we continue to have this conversation, I'll open up the floor for Q&A. Now we're ready for questions. If you have a question or comment, you can ask it using the Q&A button on the app, which also allows you to send your question anonymously if you choose. or you can ask your question live by raising your hand. To do so, click the raise hand button or press 9 if you're on the phone. I'll call on you, at which time you'll unmute to ask your question. Please do not place your question in the webinar chat. Put it on the Q&A. Hold on 1 second. Let me get to the Q&A. So I have Anonymous. Hi, I was diagnosed with MS in 2005. I'm married, but my husband doesn't understand why I'm in pain or why I go to the doctor so often. How can I help him understand why I can't work or why I'm scared to return to work?
Oh, can I take this one?
Yes.
So I facilitate a couple support groups, and one of the ones that I facilitate is called Family and Friends Awareness, because her husband or anyone can't support you until they understand what you're going through. So we meet once a month as a group, as a family and friends in the Warrior, to explain to our family and friends what's going on. And oftentimes when they hear it from someone else, they believe it. The light bulb goes on and it says, wow, something is really happening. They are experiencing pain. They do need to go to the doctors a lot. I also invite her to have her take her husband to the doctors with her. Let the doctor be there to listen. So he ask those questions so that it's believable to him, maybe. But he has to hear it from someone other than her for him to start respecting what's going on with her.
I agree.
And I don't call it being devil's advocate, but when you have this disease, you as an individual are managing so much. And, I have been married, and I actually went through my divorce, and it was finalized 2 weeks before I was diagnosed. And the doctor was like, you were probably under so much stress. It really brought out the whole onset of the disease and everything like that. I was like, I believe it. And so, with that being said, I feel like if there is a love there, and if there is the desire to want to understand and show a level of sympathy, because they can't have empathy with this unless they have it, let's be real. But if there is a desire to be sympathetic to your situation, they're gonna show up. They're gonna want to know. They will Google. They might get some stuff wrong and put it on you in an assumptive way, but they're going to show up for you. So I just say keep that in mind too, because sometimes we find out, maybe this person is not that sympathetic, or maybe they didn't grow up learning sympathy. I know a lot of people, especially men, and they've never even encountered something half as traumatic, let's call it what it is, as MS can be for certain people. It's not like that for everybody. But when I was first diagnosed, I felt like my whole world was over. And it was very few people I felt like I could talk to that would really understand, because they had a certain level of intellect and understanding. And most of them were my friends in the medical community because they got it. But they're doctors, they're nurses, right? So I had pools of people. And again, I'm very blessed because not everybody has that. But definitely try to have those talks and allow yourself to be vulnerable. There's nothing wrong with you. You didn't pick it, but be vulnerable and just see how they react. And I just say, from there, just honestly listen to your heart, because your body needs you to focus on you as much as possible. And you can't risk being stressed out because somebody doesn't understand what you're going through. Because honest to God, it ain't that hard to understand the disease mechanism. It sucks. Our medication is anywhere from $40,000 to $70,000 per infusion, per whatever, right? It's $150K for me a year. You've got to be a good person for me to invest some time in conversations in, because I am limited. And me, my kid, my inner circle, they get the best of me. if I am going to be in a space where my situation isn't understood or they're not trying to understand, I have to rethink that space. And that's just the honest to God truth.
Understood. I have Pat. I was diagnosed with MS 10 years ago. I'm at a point where I feel I need to see a therapist. How did you go about finding a therapist, and what factors were important for you choosing the right therapist?
Real quick, I have a shopping problem, and that was also how I coped having MS. So I needed to find somebody in network because I needed to make myself feel better. So in network, somebody that honestly looked like me, and that understood chronic health issues and really could talk to me about self-care. And that I would ultimately listen to because I respected their journey because again, they could relate to me. But that's it, in network.
And shop around, because the first therapist you have may not be the therapist, and don't think that it's you. Understand that it's about you. And if you don't connect to that therapist, shop around, date, frequently go to a different one until you find that one. And like I said, mine was 12 years and she's retiring at the end of the year. So I have to start shopping around and dating again. But date, go out and find a therapist.
Okay, Marla, go through an exacerbation now, had steroids, pills, starting IV tomorrow. What do you suggest I do for the stiffness? Anyone?
Honestly, I'm not a doctor, and I just want to be careful answering those type of questions. I will say if you're having issues, definitely call your therapist. As far as like a physical therapist, if you have one, call your doctor because if you're going through something, they may determine that you need steroids. So I personally don't want to answer those because I am not a healthcare provider. And what works for me is because that's what me and my doctor have come up with that works for me. So I defer to the other ladies.
And that's a really good point. Hold on, Latoya, 1 second. Really quick, we are not healthcare professionals. We are speaking. So what you're saying is absolutely correct. I would encourage you to reach out to your PT, your neurologist, if you are having some, I don't know why when I say stiffness, I must move with it, but definitely contact your healthcare professional to see if they have any feedback for you. Go ahead, Latoya, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to literally say the same thing Shambrika said. Like, I don't feel comfortable speaking on health, someone else's health issues. But for me, I did hear her, I think I heard her say that she's starting a steroid pill, and she's currently in an exacerbation. So what I recommend is allow the steroid to work. Also try to ensure that your environment is as stress-free as possible and rest. Because when you are going through that exacerbation, it is something that you went through that got you there. So you have to allow your core to calm. Like you have to just calm. So find a way to relax, take your steroids, and listen to what your doctor's telling you.
Thank you. Gigi, do we participate in research and questionnaires? Info about us is lacking, especially if you are Black, female, and 55 plus. Researchers seek us for more rich data, and we can also influence MS orgs like this one to promote research.
I have to say, like, I've worked with Casey from the organization for years at this point, and she's so good with reaching out and letting us know what opportunities exist. And if I feel it's a good fit for me, I sign up for it and I talk through it. And even outside of this organization, there are like organizations that are like, they'll find different types of research, panels that exist and everything like that. And you at that point as an individual have the option if you want to pursue that or not. A lot of them want me to stop my medication. I'm like, nope. So I'm like, you're not for me, but I hope you find what you're looking for in life. Go forward and be blessed. But I'm not coming off my medication. I've gone through 3 and this one works. I'm all the way good.
So I am over the 55-year-old threshold that many research studies look for. So I look for studies that are looking for people in the older realm. So I've been fortunate to find several in the Maryland area, Johns Hopkins, that I really enjoyed and participated in and found the benefit of them. So I'm your MS guinea pig, because if not, who will? And we cannot find a treatment, a cure, a better way if we don't. So I encourage people to, yay, Gigi, I encourage you to seek out. And if it's not the study for you, you don't have to do it. But listen to what they have to say and see how it can benefit you. Because I have grandchildren now, and I need this to be eradicated as smallpox was 50 years ago. So I need this. So I'm your MS guinea pig. I'm the one who's going to raise your hand or tap on someone's door and say, why not me? And oftentimes, if a study says 55 and under, if I go there, the doctor will see if they can be an exception to their plan. So I'm your MS guinea pig. So I encourage you to get out there and be an MS guinea pig.
I agree. For me, my neurologist brings me a lot of studies, especially if there's something that I can actively do while I'm there. In terms of research, I know there's something on the iPad every time I go. He has me answer. I found it's called Rare Patient Voice. I found not sponsoring them or anything, but I found them through social media. I signed up for their emails. I often get surveys that they pay you to participate in. Sadly for me, I don't really get selected for any of them because my DMT I chose is Lemtrada. So I am not actively on a DMT, and it's harder for me to be able to participate and have, essentially the outcome that they're looking for. But I also tell everyone, if you can and you look like us, please participate. I'm like almost begging you to, because if we don't participate, they can't get the information that they need that could essentially help us. So if it is something that you're interested in and you meet the criteria and categories, a lot of them, like I said, are paid. You get some kind of something for it. Please do them, try them out. Don't, if it's too much to do, I totally understand, but it really helps us at the end of the day, be able to get the medication and the treatment and the care that we need.
And also, if you have a family member that is in the healthy, what they consider healthy, they also look for healthy candidates in research so they can compare to see what happened to us. So if you have a family member, please encourage them to also participate.
I was driving to work, I think yesterday, and I did hear something on the radio about looking for healthy candidates. And at first I didn't really understand the purpose of healthy candidates, but like I kind of get it now. I'm like, why would a healthy person want to subject theirself? Like, just, when you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the knowledge. And I really shouldn't say that because I work at the MS Foundation, but that's neither here nor there. This particular research wasn't even about MS, but they were looking for healthy candidates. So they do have someone to compare the information. So, and you never know, like you could go and you can go for a trial and they'll give you the placebo and you won't even get the medication. So healthy candidates are just as valuable as candidates with the MS. Just wanted to say that.
And I wanted, you said something and it made me think. I did the trial for it was a vaccine during COVID that they were testing on immunocompromised individuals. I'm trying to remember the name of it once it actually got released because they had to like inject it in my buttocks. But I participated in that, and my neuro, when he bought it to me, I was like, "Are you crazy?" Like, no. And he was like, "Well, we will hope that it will help you even further from getting COVID because you are at more of a risk of contracting it and going through, you know, exacerbation because of it with your MS, and then COVID itself could do something completely different." And in that moment, I called him back up later and I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I did it. I felt like it helped, even though I felt like initially I was kind of like against it. I'm like, I can just stay in the house. But I also didn't want, you know, to contract COVID in any other kind of way. So that was just an experience I wanted to share.
Latoya, I had COVID 3 times. The first 2, I thought it was about to take me out. Trust me. It like after the first time, I was running to go and get the vaccine. So anything that can help you from not to get it, like I definitely encourage people go get it because COVID is just crazy. Hold on one second. Dealing with in-house stress and any suggestions.
I don't understand what her question is.
Dealing with in-house stress and any suggestions. So I guess just wanting to know, how do you deal with stress in your home or with family in your home, maybe husband, significant other, children, teens, adults?
For me, well, my kid's a little bit older, so I don't want to pretend like I don't understand the trials and tribulations of toddlers or them in between ages. I have a preteen that's in basketball practice. So when she comes home, she's a decent human being. She's tired. So I don't have to like self-entertain and do all that. And also she understands. She understands what my disease is. She understands what I may or may not feel like, which is not often, but she knows like on infusion days, mama is knocked out. I'm not sure how many people take infusions, but it's not the medication that makes me tired, it's the Benadryl that I have to take because of the allergic reaction. So she just knows like to be understanding. So I think the communication, like having your household understand what you're going through so they know how to, you know, show up or go away to give you that time. At night, I listen to Balance. I actually leave that on all night when I sleep. It helps me sleep. I think it helps my kids sleep. We run. It's 6 degrees up here right now. I'm not running anywhere. I got to find something else to do. But, you know, we work out together, and I think that helps me overall with my mood and everything. So that's pretty much it for me. Eat good, open communication, low barrier as far as like things that I just have to do on a day to day, giving myself that grace, giving myself that space, and having that good communication again with my kid to, you know, let's stay active together, let's hang out together. That's our time, but then we kind of break off. So
Got it.
Stress is one of those things that really affect MS, and uh, especially in your household, everybody's household is different. But if you can find ways, and Shambrika mentioned the ways that that help her eliminate stress. If you can find ways, things that you like to do, maybe it's getting outside of the house, maybe it's finding a place in the house that you feel really peaceful to read or listen to a podcast. What I find for me and managing my stress, trying to establish a better sleep routine. So going to sleep with less on me. I sleep better when I'm not going to sleep thinking about all the things I need to do the next day, all the things I didn't do the day that I'm ending. Finding time to allow your brain and your body to just rest, I think is very important. But I know everybody deals with stress differently. They handle stress, they absorb stress differently. So I just recommend you like really sit down with yourself and think about how how what it is you do when you feel less stressed, and do more of that, because I know we can't always just change the people in our homes, whether it's kids or your kids won't go anywhere, but significant others or husbands, like um some of those things we can change and maybe should. I just want to say that I had my times throughout a lot of my time living with MS. I had to change that person because they stress me. So I am not that person because I'm not stressed, but I mean, that took time. And if that's the case, I'm, an advocate to say, you know, do what you need to do for you.
All right.
And is the stress in your home, is it something that maybe you can do with the other person? Maybe if your child is stressing you out, maybe you and your child can make cookies together and talk. If it's your husband stressing you out, maybe y'all can go to dinner and talk, or learn a new craft together. But maybe find a commonality with the people that are stressing you out so that you can learn from them, they can learn from you. So maybe y'all can learn a new craft together. And while you're doing that, get to know each other better so that the stress is reduced.
That's a good answer. So the last question from Anonymous says, what kind of exercise do you advise? I know Shambrika did say running. This isn't running season right now. To speak a little bit about the foundation, we do assist with recumbent bikes through our assistive technology program. The application is available online at msfocus.org, but that's another stress reliever, exercise. Now, I'm not advocating for exercise. I don't do it, but it is a stress reliever, okay?
Does walking to the kitchen and get a piece of chicken count as exercise?
Yes, ma'am.
If it is, I exercise frequently, but a lot of my exercise comes from my physical therapist. Twice a week and 3 times the opposite week is where I get a lot of my exercise. But in one of my self-help groups, we are starting resistance training in 2025 together. So we're going to work on that as a group together. So resistance training is what I'm looking into now.
And I think too, I love that so much. Please, let me know how I can connect with you because it sounds really cool. I think sometimes we forget with MS that we really need to work out our brain. When I was first diagnosed, I found out what regions were affected in my brain. And I'm like, no, we got to change this. So I started learning different things that would exercise and help these neurons just fire off and talk to each other. So I picked up chess. I started writing books. Actually brought my kid into that. So we co-authored a children's series together. And we started painting. We just started being super creative. And ultimately that came to haunt me because she thought we could paint walls. And I'm like, this is not our house. This is an apartment. So we had to divert. We didn't get mad. We had to just divert those talents back to canvas. But it was fun. And it really helped me through those times when, I was just trying to find my space. But I think sometimes we only think about the physical when we think about working out. But we need to remember that, MS, in my opinion, it puts you at a disadvantage for so many more things down the line too. So make sure to exercise your brain in ways that you don't typically do.
And that's a great point. And with resistance training, one of the things that we will be doing is reciting the alphabet backwards and counting or multiplying by certain things while you're resistance training. So you're doing 2 for 1. Mind and body go together.
I couldn't cite it backwards before MS, but that's the starting point. So I'm here.
All right, ladies. So I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. I'm going to go ahead and do my outro. That brings us to the end of our time. If you missed any part of this conference, it has been recorded and will be available through the MS Focus Facebook and YouTube channels. Reply to your registration email for information on how to access the recordings, or sign up for our newsletter to learn about upcoming events. Our next teleconference will be Tuesday, January 7th, 2025 at 3 p.m. Eastern. Our speaker that afternoon will be Sherry Benz, our patient healthcare liaison. Sherry will be presenting a town hall Q&A titled Ask the MS Nurse. The attendees can ask her questions about symptom management. As you leave the conference today, a survey will appear on your screen. We ask that you take a moment to give us feedback about this program and your suggestions for future topics. Our hope is to always provide you the best and most meaningful programs possible. Our sincere thanks to our attendees for your participation, especially to our wonderful panel. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your thoughts and views on such important topics. Goodbye to everyone and have a wonderful evening.